These investigations have shown a blatant disregard for the safety of human beings, and arrests must be made and have been made. There must be accountability for the actions and inactions of state employees. As the sheriff, I am angered at how these men were treated and how they died.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. The Dodge County Sheriff didn't hold back today after revealing bombshell allegations against a prison warden at Waupun Correctional Institution and 8 of his employees. All 9 of them were charged with felonies this afternoon in connection to the deaths of 2 inmates. Hours later, online records show all of them are out on bond tonight. The arrests include the former warden, 62-year-old Randall Hepp. He just announced his retirement yesterday. Staff members include correctional officers and registered nurses. The charges include abuse of residents of penal facilities and misconduct in public office. Brittany Schmidt has details on how this investigation led to these charges.
The Dodge County Sheriff outlined several massive failures within prison walls by staff members during an hour-long press conference Wednesday afternoon. As we've reported, 4 people have died at the prison since June of last year. But the 2 most recent deaths are the ones that led to these criminal charges against staff members.
Accountability will now occur, which is what people are looking for.
During a sweeping investigation, Dodge County Sheriff Dale Schmidt connects 2 inmate deaths at Waupun Correctional Institution to the alleged actions and lack thereof of several prison employees.
These cases have infuriated me.
Schmidt says the lack of following procedures, lack of accountability, and negligence by staffers directly led to the deaths of Cameron Williams and Donald Meyer. 24-year-old Williams died of a stroke last October. The investigation revealed he was stumbling, had difficulty breathing, and told staff 3 days earlier he needed to go to the hospital. The sheriff says no action was taken by staff or supervisors.
Evidence shows that the decedent was dead in his cell at least 12 hours before he was discovered on the morning of October 30th, 2023. I'll say that again. He was dead in his cell for over 12 hours until they located him the next morning.
In February, Schmidt says 62-year-old Meyer died of dehydration and malnutrition. The sheriff says staff members failed to follow hunger strike protocols. Meyer didn't get 9 of his 12 meals in 4 days.
It gets worse.
Schmidt says water was shut off in Meyer's cell numerous times for legitimate reasons, but documentation failed to reveal how long he was without water.
Security staff notified nursing staff that the decedent had not eaten food for a couple of days, was drinking sewage water, and played in the toilet.
As the sheriff described the findings of his criminal investigation, across the street, the 9 defendants made their first court appearance. A defense attorney for a registered nurse charged with abuse in Williams' death addressed the court.
Believe me, the last thing in the world she wanted was for this young man to suffer. And if she had thought that there was anything she could have done to avoid it, she would have done it.
She, along with 8 other employees at one of Wisconsin's maximum security prisons, including the warden, all named in the investigation. The Department of Corrections Secretary Jared Hoy released a statement Wednesday afternoon. He says they are cooperating with the investigation, saying more charges could be coming as 20 staff members remain under internal investigation. In the meantime, a separate investigation is underway at the request of Governor Tony Evers. This one is being handled at the federal level, where investigators are looking into a suspected drug and cell phone smuggling ring involving prison employees at Waupun. That investigation is still ongoing. In the newsroom, Brittany Schmidt, Action 2 News.
Brittany, thank you. Meanwhile, State Representative David Steffen released a statement this afternoon calling on Governor Tony Evers to close both the Green Bay Correctional Institution and Waupun Correctional Institution, adding, quoting, "Now conditions, especially at Green Bay and Waupun, are ripe for tragedy. This is unacceptable. Governor Evers must step up and begin actively addressing the failures within our correction system, starting with the closure of these 2 facilities," end quote. Meanwhile, the governor released a statement regarding the charges filed today, saying in part, quoting, "Now, each and every person who failed to do their job to the highest level that we expect or treat people in our care with the dignity, humanity, and respect they deserve should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. It's that simple," end quote. He continued saying the Dodge County Sheriff's Office should keep its investigation open into the Waupun Correctional Institution, and the DOC should report the findings of its internal investigations to them.